What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of JaAR. God damn it. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe.
And Amy.
Review. Yeah, that's right. We're not taking it again. That's staying.
I was waiting to see. So I was trying not to talk.
Yeah.
But
did I say review? Review is the R. I think I said it. But anyway, this is our weekly show where we review the magic stories, but sometimes there's a long span between when we film these, and I forget our own intro because that's just what I do. Hey, thanks so much for joining us.
Yes.
And if you want more of this just expertly crafted content, you should definitely subscribe and ring that bell. It is super helpful to us, but it's also helpful to you because you make sure that you will get notifications whenever any of our videos come out. That's any JaAR, even weeks where it's late or it's not up and you want to make sure that you know whether it went up or not. You don't have to check constantly. Just subscribe and ring that bell and you'll get that notification, hopefully on Thursday, hopefully at noon when the video goes up. To let you know that JaAR is live and you can go watch it to your heart's content. And you'll get notifications whenever we go live on stream. That's every Monday and Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on this channel. Mondays are typically MTG Arena, and Fridays are typically video games, as Amy's shirt may clue you in this week. We have been playing through Dragon Ball Z Budokai, the series, the 6-game series from the PlayStation 2. What a great shirt model you are.
Why is this so difficult for my hand to do? This motion is just like, it's shaking. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can.
It's shaking.
Yeah. But we've been going through that PlayStation 2 series. We've played through almost 5 full games. We are at the tail end of Tenkaichi 2 at the time of filming. And a little asterisk caveat onto this description of our live streams. This Friday, the day after this video comes out, which will be Friday, July 16th, 2021, we will not be live on stream. It is actually the first time, to my knowledge, since we started going live every Friday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. This will be the first Friday that we are not live at that time, I think. I could be wrong. Because...
No, DBZ.
Because we're doing D&D instead. That's right, because for those of you who are fans of Magic the Gathering, you already know the Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set pre-release is this weekend. And we, fully vaccinated as we are, and our local game store, doing all the appropriate things that they need to do, following the rules, etc., are having an event. And there are going to be people at that event, and we are going to be some of those people. And so not only are we returning to in-person paper Magic events for the first time since whatever set was prior to mid-March of 2020, because it was so long ago. But we are also returning to how we like to celebrate pre-release here on this channel, and that is to be live at the pre-release on Friday. It is no longer necessary for it to be the midnight, although if you're doing a midnight pre-release, more power to you, best of luck.
Have at it.
But we're old, and so sometimes we get tired, and so we go to whichever events we can get ourselves to. I'm going to play in as many as possible, but Friday, we're working. So we are going to be live at the event. We are going to be filming 4, count them, 4 pre-release packs being opened. That video, all in one, will be out to you at some point on Friday night. Obviously, there is not a definitive time, which is why you should subscribe and ring that bell. Because you will get that video out. Hey, if you're on MTG Arena and you can't get out to a pre-release safely, then you get a code as well, if you can get there quickly enough, because we are going to be giving those codes away. No reason not to. I don't need all 4. I only need 1, and you only need 1 as well.
So keep your eyes peeled.
Yes. And there will also be just a fun add-on video of us going around the event, checking out the cool cards that people are opening, how folks are doing, and talking about the set itself, seeing how the store is ready for the event. So it should be an amazing time. We are looking forward to it.
Beautifully it's decorated.
Exactly. We are very much looking forward to it. We hope you are looking forward to going, if you can do so safely. And if not, we hope that you can come to us and live vicariously through that video and do it the safe way.
Right.
to make sure that you enjoy all aspects of the Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms Magic the Gathering set release.
And get yourself a code.
Exactly. If you're one of the first 4 people there and can skim through to get that code. But if not, don't worry, we do have our regular releases on Mondays. Keep that bell rung, and you will be able to see those as well. So,
We've done
hey,
that about 4 times so far in this video.
did you know that we're here for JaAR? This week, we are here to review. We are continuing through our Battle for Zendikar / Oath of the Gatewatch story reviews. We are here for Oath of the Gatewatch these days. And we are continuing that inspired by our trip, our most recent trip to Zendikar and Zendikar Rising, because God knows, even though Zendikar Rising was a few sets ago now, we are still inspired by it and we are still going through these stories because there are a lot of them. Imagine, remember when life was like this? It was great.
But we are so many stories for a set.
We are here to review Reclamation by Mel Lee. And I mean,
great author.
Yeah. My quick review at the top. You may be surprised by this one.
Oh.
I thought the story was fine. And I think that if you wanted to, based on what occurs in the story, and especially for like long term, this is probably one of the ones that would be skippable. But if you enjoy good story, you should probably still read it. I thought it was a good story to read. I just did not think it would be very impactful for the long term.
Right.
At least based on my memory. So.
Yeah, the characters that are depicted in the story, I agree with you. It's great writing, very descriptive.
Yeah.
Kind of to my chagrin.
Oh yeah, that's true. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. But it's a great story. But if you're looking to save time and absolutely skip some, you're right. This is probably one of the ones to skip because you're not going to be sitting there going, looking at later stories, trying to keep that continuity line going in your head, because this one is sort of standalone.
Yeah. But if you enjoy a good story, you have some free time, you're not going to be disappointed to read this one. It's just that, if you need to skip one, this would be the one to do it. But the reason that we mention that is because if you are, after that review, interested in reading the story, we're going to help you out a little bit. The top link in the description down below will take you to that story on Wizard's website, and you can read it for yourself and enjoy the art and the story and etc. And then obviously we hope that you will come back here and join us for the full review itself, because as we tend to say, even with these older stories, we are still reviewing, not summarizing. So we hope that, like I said, we hope that you'll come back here and join us. So, this story is about Mina and Den Wildborn. They are a card, twin elves, and their card, the legendary creature card for these two, was spoiled with this story. God, wasn't that cool? Mm-hmm. When that used to happen?
Yeah.
And
that was a cool ass card too. The art was pretty sick.
Plus
it's a gruel.
Plus it's gruel. When I'm not necessarily saying that we should go back to it or whatever, it was just a way to make sure that your story got views sometimes.
And correlated directly with the cards that had been made.
That's a different story as well. And that's why it's not as possible now, because the stories are so barely tangentially related at this point, because they're written either so far after the fact, seemingly so far after the fact, because sets are worked on so in advance. And does that mean that you couldn't have authors working with the R&D team the same way that you have artists working with the D&D team?
Don't ask.
I don't know. I actually don't.
I will sit here and scream.
I actually don't know. So I'm not necessarily sitting here and saying that they should go. I'm not necessarily sitting here and saying that they should go back to it. What I am saying is that was great. It would be a great way to make sure that your players were more engaged with your stories if they were just looking for cards. But again, if you have a gruel lover like Amy, who looked at that card and was like, this is really cool. Maybe it's impactful in some way, in limited for you, or in standard in some way. Doubtful in more eternal formats, but maybe, who knows. And it can be worked with in some capacity. That would be a really cool way to make sure that maybe somebody goes, you know what, I've been playing with this card for so long. What's the story behind this thing?
Yeah.
Oh, right, it was spoiled in a story. Let me go look at it. Like, there are absolutely those people at pre-release events where when we're talking about a card just casually or whatever, like we open a card and we're talking about it, if I'll say, oh man, that was that part in the story where this happened, and there will absolutely be people who are like, oh, I don't read the story, and like they don't care.
They don't care.
No. And that's totally fine. Everybody, to each their own. But there will be other people who don't read the story, but who are like, oh man, tell me more about that. That sounds cool.
Or they look at a picture on a card and go, what is it that I'm seeing here?
Right. Why is this?
Tell me about this.
Yeah. And so we'll do this again later. But so a good way to show off your
Hashtag Vorthos Pride
is to be the me at the pre-release who is like, like, oh man, Mina and Den Wildborn, they had a really interesting story. Like, their characters were able to use the dirt and the land to, like, create shields for themselves from the Eldrazi. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, that whole thing. Like, you could just do that. And, again, if people don't care, okay, move on with your life. You shouldn't be insulted, right? That they just don't care, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But there might be people who are actually interested. And then, maybe... I don't see it as like being a corporate shill. Maybe other people think differently. I'm serious. Like maybe other people are like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna like toot the horn of a multi-million-dollar company that's not compensating me for doing that. And that's totally fine too, but it would have to be if you enjoyed the story, right? Not just like oh, Mina and Den Wildborn. Did you know that there's a
you're not advertising. You're telling your friend about a thing you think is cool.
Yeah. That's all.
And that's what consumerism is supposed to be.
I will say...
As opposed to what it actually has become.
I will say, as I read through the beginning of this story, with kind of Mina going through and the descriptions of her walking through the blight towards the beginning and like what she saw and what she felt, Melly did like an amazing job of the descriptions there, which is a positive. We'll get to the negatives later. Yeah. But, and not negatives like Mel Lee's bad. It's negatives like, certain situations, and you'll see. But the descriptions were amazing. And yet, the thing that I thought of while reading through this was, oh, okay, so the Battle for Zendikar climax is definitely over. And now we're in that transitionary period of like, hey, the dust is settling after last week, where Gideon almost dies, and Nissa almost dies, and Jace almost dies at the hand of Ob Nixilis, and Kozilek is here, and now here's these two characters that you've never met before and that you'll possibly never see again, and the dust is very heavily settled, and you're just going to get a story of them and living their lives, whatever.
Assessing the damage, really. It's like, okay, let's kind of like wander the surface of this planet.
Yeah.
And see what survived.
Right. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but they are Moldaya elves, and they are searching for the other elven lands, and again, coming across this blight or whatever, and they're found by Warden Tenru, who is a Tajuru elf, and then they meet other people towards the end of the story, but there's a lot going on in between. But yeah, I feel like this story is the one that lets you know, like, okay, that was in the past. Let's regroup as readers and as fans and viewers. And now we're going to go into what the Oath of the Gatewatch stories are all about, which is about Kozilek and Ulamog, but not all about that one moment at Seagate, where like the last 6 stories have been or whatever, even though it does tie it back in where at the end, they're like, okay, well, our leader is Tazri. I love General Tazri if you're new.
Name drop.
Love her so much. And she is at this place near the Halimar, Seagate. And it's like so casual. Again, talk about name drop. They're just so casually
it's a place I've never heard of.
Yeah. Oh, this place. It's probably significant to somebody who might be listening to us talk right now, but whatever. We just have to go there.
Because, you know, they might have read like 6 stories on it, like Joe just said.
It really was. I'm not even exaggerating. It was probably more than 6.
Well, I mean, they talked about going to Seagate in 6 stories, and then they were at Seagate in 6 stories.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, the whole like setting up the ring, or like planning, setting up the ring falls, the ring falls, the ring falls, the ring has fallen. Like, it was a lot. But now we're away from that. And then we get to kind of the part that you hated. if I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't know if you want to talk about it or you want me to say what I have first.
Yeah, just...
Okay.
I don't want to.
That's fine. There was basically a moment where a 4-legged dog-like Eldrazi, right, comes up to the twins and wails at them. It was kind of... It actually very much looked like the Demogorgon from Stranger Things, if you're familiar. Or like other things that look exactly like the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. But it's like, you know, like the 4-pronged mouth like opens up and it like wails at you, and the wail was like, it was one of Kozilek's minions, and so it had like coloration to the waves, the sound waves coming out of it.
Sick.
Yeah. The art was insane. It was really cool looking. But by that point, we already gotten kind of knee-deep in the descriptions, and so I don't know how much you were able to appreciate that art. But the description of what happened to those twins while that Eldrazi was wailing at them was brutal. Very, like, I will say, it was very body horror, right? And yet, I would argue, typically, body horror is not something that bothers you. It's not something that we seek out and frequent, but there are, like, occasions in media where that occurs, and that's not typically something that bothers you, but this time, for whatever reason, it
just kept going on and on and on and on. And I think if it was only a visual media, I think it would have been a different story. But because it was just words of description over and over and through and more, it was just like, oh, stop it. You're like assaulting me.
Yeah.
But it wasn't annoying. It was just awful. You know, it was, I don't know what else to say.
Well, and I will say, this was the first time in this set of stories, and it will not be the last, where we get detailed descriptions of how regular people on Zendikar are affected by the Eldrazi. Because, like, Gideon never deals with this, Nissa never deals with this, Jace never deals with this, because they can't. They have to be characters in the next set, right? Yeah. Drana had her story in Battle for Zendikar, which we already reviewed weeks ago, and she dealt with this. And we had... we will have other characters. I don't want to spoil anything if people are actually following along in this with us. But we will have other characters in this set of stories in a few weeks who deal with the corruption of the Eldrazi or the influence of the Eldrazi. And this was our example of Mina dealing with it. Kind of Den, but it was told from Mina's perspective. So, like, you saw what she saw of what was happening to Den, but... and then she like fell through the floor or whatever and ended up on the dirt again, which then allowed her to gain her special abilities as the new speaker of the Moldaya, it seems, in that she can use the voices of her ancestors to combat the Eldrazi, to inspire Den, or awaken Den or whatever. And it was that description as well was really great, and not as body horror-y, so it was a good thing.
It was great.
Yeah. Just really well, and again, that's at least 3 instances in this story where it's just a block of good description. Yeah. And so if that's the kind of thing that you enjoy, that's why I said at the top, like...
the one to read.
Yeah. Like, it's skippable because you don't need it, but it's still like a good read.
It's standalone.
Yeah.
So you can avoid it if you're trying to avoid stories.
Yeah.
Or you can read it if this is the type of story that you'd really be interested in.
Yeah. It is very
And
good.
we're trying to tell you if you'd really be interested in it by telling you what it's like.
Yeah. And then, I mean, we kind of get to Niceed at the end. I don't know if you had more to talk about here. Like,
Not really.
But we get to Niceed. They meet Niceed, who is like, I guess, the elder. They gave her a title that I did not write down, and I do apologize for that. But they meet Niceed, who's like the head speaker of like the rest of the elven clans or whatever, who basically says like, yes, you are our kin. You can come with us. We are going to our general, or to our leader, Tazri, at Seagate. Come with us.
Right.
And that's the big like, oh, this is how it ties back in moment. You know, which, I mean,
But it's kind of thrown together. It's kind of like shoehorned a little bit.
I mean, we had heard multiple times that, like, there were no other civilizations left on Zendikar. Right. So this was just another one of those moments of, like, there's no more civilizations except for this one. Right. Or this could technically be oh, no, it can't be a flashback because it's got Kozilek's minions, so never mind.
I think it's kind of more of a way of saying, like, here's an entire plane, an entire planet, if you will, and all of its people and its different civilizations. It gets destroyed, essentially, and then you have very few survivors of each civilization. And this is kind of their way of finding each other and being able to move forward. You know, if they all stayed exactly where they were, you know, there'd be 2 here, 5 here, 6 here, you know, but instead they're collecting together so that they can support each other.
Right. And again,
because they used to have their own civilizations, their own communities to support them, and now they don't, because those communities no longer exist.
Right, they've been splintered, if not outright decimated, and so, Well, and it also kind of came to the point where it was like, well, if we collect most of the remaining life forms from this plane in one place, then all of our troubles will come to us. We can take care of them and then disperse back out to where we came from in order to try to rebuild our lives. But if we are like a random smattering of 10 people over here and 30 people over there and 5 people over there, and Ulamog shows up, we're each individually screwed. Whereas if we come together, we actually have a damn chance.
Humans can't survive that way. Eldrazi or not.
Right. Or core or elves or vampires or whatever.
No, I mean Eldrazi fucking up the world or not.
Right, you said humans can't survive that way. I said or elves or core or whatever.
But I'm making the parallel to reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Human beings can't survive that way.
Yeah.
You mentioned civilizations. Civilizations that are that small can't continue. They need to have more people.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Or else they won't survive.
Right. Yeah, and you, like, they're hoping to get to a point of rebuilding, but they need to get to the point of eliminating the threat first.
Right.
So
eliminating the threat, you know, expanding the population, and then sort of finding their way back out to either the place that they came from, like you said before, or new places that they like to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I assume in that process there'd be a lot more mixing of different races if different races or species or whatever they consider them.
Right.
You know, if they can reproduce with one another, and even if they can't, you know, I would see, you know, this vampire over here falls in love with, you know, this merfolk over here, because all of a sudden they live together at Seagate, as opposed to being in completely different areas of the world.
And they have to make a house on the shore, because, you know.
Yeah.
One lives on land, one lives in water, but still.
You know, they get a pool. I don't know. You know,
and that's where the merfolk lives.
They figure it out.
That's
you know,
awesome.
they fall in love and they figure it out.
It's true. we get to the point of the description of the twins when they were attacked by the Eldrazi in their land, and their ancestors told them, or the elders told them, we stand our ground. That's what we will do here. This is our land. We stand our ground. And the ancestors had been buried in somewhat shallow graves because of the royal, and yet because of the Eldrazi coming through, it meant that those ancestors were getting, like, just eaten or corrupted or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that was where they were saying that because of that, that they were losing their ancestors' voices and memories.
Okay. Yeah, I just, like, made that parallel to, like, Native Americans specifically, where it was like, you know, in this case it's Eldrazi, but people come in, like, get you fucking sick, take your shit, kill you, and then you lose so much of what made up your culture, what made up who you are as a people, because it just gets lost to time.
And
because so much of the people who would continue to carry on those legacies are gone. And they didn't have a chance to continue on those legacies with their children and grandchildren and things like that because they were murdered.
And it's
or
interesting.
fell ill and quickly died. You know, things like that.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that you mentioned that it was Native Americans for you. Not that that's an incorrect thing to draw or not a great point, but to me, I first thought of a lot of the conflict in the Middle East.
Okay.
With trying to reclaim the Holy Land, like that they feel that there are people who feel like, look, that's where our ancestors were and lived, and we want to get back to our land. So those people actually feel that they have the opportunity to go back to where they want to be. Think about slaves that were brought here to the United States from Africa. Well, now there are generations of people who don't know exactly where they're from, and so their culture was ripped from them.
Right.
And taken from them as well. So
and not to mention the cultures that existed in Africa prior to them being torn apart by slave traders. I mean, you know, and imperialists.
Mm-hmm. So all of that, a very important point to make.
We recently watched a video where they talked about, because it was a very old video, but they talked about the Amazon rainforests getting burned down.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't realize is there were indigenous people living in those jungles.
Yeah.
And they were killed and or forced out of their homes. And when I say homes, I mean that location, because they didn't necessarily have structures that were their homes. I don't know the specifics of that. But you know, those people had a culture, they had a home, they had an environment that they lived in, and that no longer exists.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is like...
Because, you know, politicians wanted to, you know, make their dicks look bigger or something.
Yeah, something like that. Or fill their coffers, which is really more what it is.
Whatever. Same thing.
Yeah, basically. And that's kind of it. I mean, again, it was a decent length story, and yet, you know, because there's like, it's a long description, but you should read it because it's really good, is kind of the extent of what we could say about it. So, you know, if
really in-depth descriptions, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, and like, I mean, cool building of random characters that, again, I don't recall. I mean, maybe we'll see them again, like a cameo of them later in a battle, in this set of stories in Oath of the Gatewatch. But as far as I know, when we went back in Zendikar Rising, I didn't see them again.
No.
And
I remembered
we
them.
wouldn't have seen them anywhere else.
I remembered them from this story and from the card by looking at the card that, you know, they showed it in the story.
Right.
And I recognized it, and I remembered thinking that they were so cool back when we read this story.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where it ended, because they didn't do anything else with these characters. They existed in this story and on a card, and that was the beginning and the end of it.
Sure.
But, you know, I remember thinking they were cool. This story is written by Mel Lee. Maybe one of the things that you enjoy doing if you're watching these videos of these older stories is trying to kind of formulate in your head like the beginning and the end of these amazing authors that we used to have. Like, okay, this was like the first really good story by Mel Lee, and like sort of see in your own head how Mel Lee specifically progresses and like works her way up to a great author.
And don't forget, I can't guarantee you that this is her first story. It is her first story in Battle for Zendikar / Oath of the Gatewatch, but I don't know if she did any for Khans of Tarkir or any of those. I don't recall that.
I'm just saying the beginning is wherever you begin.
Good point. Good point. And yes, I mean, obviously because we've been doing this show for so long, I know I do and I know you do as well. So I don't feel bad about speaking for you and saying this, but that we have very good memories of great Mel Lee stories.
Yeah.
She was in that one podcast episode that we reviewed as well. Like, it was just, she was a great addition to the team. And again, as with many or most or all, missed as part of that team as well. So a bit of a shame.
Yeah, and as I said in some of these other episodes that we did of these older stories, you know, I feel like we're still kind of working up to, or just beginning, the sort of golden age, if you will, of the story team. And they're like, them sort of like reaching their potential of like their creative boundaries, or whatever you might say.
Right. Combined with the fact that we are seeing threads beginning now in these stories that get woven through to like 7 sets later or whatever. Whether they intended it at that time or not, they were still able to tie it back in because they were so close to those previous stories that they'd written. So still amazing regardless. Great to see where it's going to continue to go, because there's plenty more of these left.
Right.
So definitely stay tuned for more of these. It is our great hope that we will continue to make these consistently every Thursday. If things come up, we're still putting out a lot of content on this channel, on Video Games for All. We have Gluten Free for All as well. Keep in touch with all of them. Links to any other channels that aren't this one in the description down below. Don't forget, subbing, ring the bell. We said it a million times, but it's super helpful on all of those. Video Games for All is doing some incredible stuff.
Yeah.
And we have some even more amazing stuff coming down the pipe, I promise. But if you're into older games like Pokemon Silver or Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, those are 2 of the 3 series going on that channel right now. And there are other series coming out soon that we have not even announced yet that you should definitely...
amazing.
Absolutely amazing. I know you're thinking of the one that we recently finished, but I'm also thinking of the one that we did months ago.
I'm thinking of both of them.
Yeah, because they're great. They're coming up.
Yeah.
They're coming up in the next few months. We've got a couple months, but that channel is growing fast and doing great things, and we hope that you'll go to that one as well as this one, because we are definitely still doing great things here. In fact, as I said, with the pre-release video that's coming out on Friday, we'll then have another one on Monday, and then another one the Monday after that, and another one the Monday after that, because I have a problem. And I'm not going to be dealing with that problem anytime soon, because I have opened more pre-release kits than anybody else here on this platform, and I'm going to keep going. I'm not resting on those laurels, so... Wow, thanks.
Check those videos out.
Yeah. So that is going to be the end of this particular episode. Thank you all so very much for watching. I really hope everybody enjoyed. Even with a story like this, that if you were looking for stories to skip, you could. At a time where we are not getting stories, although we did get another of those short form D&D campaigns released today, Wednesday, the day that we're filming this, so the day before this video comes out. And so that is in the story section for Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. We're not getting traditional stories, and so using these to tide you over, joining in with us and your fellow commenters in discussing these stories is a great way to continue to join us as we show off our...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
I told you we'd do it again. So, like I said, thank you all so very much. We hope to see you in any of the videos that we make. And that is going to be the end of this particular video, as I said. So, thank you for all for watching. And for now, from us here at this Geek for All family of channels, I've been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.